Welcome to Kikiriki Talks.
Bonjour.
Kamarjoba.
Kikiriki Talks. Let's kiki about Kikiriki.
Bok. Welcome to Kikiriki Talks episode 9. I'm Anna.
I'm Caroline.
Happy Pride Month. Today we have special guest, Branimira.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Branimira is our mentor here. And
she is our guest to continue our special LGBTQ series and talk more about this topic, but for Croatia. Yeah, we thought it would be interesting to have someone who can explain and have a local point of view and give us the whole history and background of the LGBTQ plus community and history.
Yeah, I just want to say that I learned a lot during the preparation of this podcast because I am really a strong supporter for LGBTQ community, but I'm not actually part of it. So I also had to prepare and to learn some new stuff. And I okay, now I feel okay to talk about it. So thank you for inviting me. And I think it's really important topic, especially because here in Karlovac, we do not talk a lot about it. Or, for example, NGOs are not really working in this field. So I'm really, really okay with that I'm here to talk about it.
Well, thank you. Do you know when was the first Pride Parade held in Croatia?
Yeah, I know. Okay, the first Pride was in 2002. So in 2002, we had the first Pride. The first Pride was held in Zagreb, and since then we had one Pride in Zagreb every single year. The first one was not very easy to organize. It was organized under really severe police protection, and it was not really safe to go to that Pride. I do remember it like news on television because I was 13 years old, I think. And I do remember some riots and, people throwing stones and cursing. And, you had a small community of people walking down the street and big community screaming at them. So I do remember a little bit of it, but not that much. Since then, we had prides also in Split, Osijek, Rijeka, the biggest cities. But the pride in Croatia is traditionally organized in Zagreb. And I think the biggest one was 2016. I think that was my first pride that I went.
So the first pride was a bit aggressive?
Yeah, it was a little bit unsafe to be there. Like I said, it was necessary to have police protection. It was something, to be aware of. Bad things can happen. But for me, from my perspective, was also like 15 years later when I went to my first pride, it was also under police protection. And, it was not that unsafe anymore, but it felt unsafe at the moment when I saw the police officers, walking by the pride, and it was okay, yeah, this is the legacy that we had from our first pride till now. But it was not surprising because I think that somewhere around that time there was an attempt of first pride in Belgrade, and they really devastated the whole center of Belgrade in Serbia. And I think last year it was the first pride in Bosnia. It was interesting to know that Zagreb Pride was the one that people usually came from the whole region, especially Bosnia and Serbia, because they were not able to have a pride in their countries.
Okay, so Croatia was, we can say, first in Balkan region?
I would say Slovenia, but I didn't really check on it. It's my maybe presumption, but yeah. Out of Bosnia and Serbia, yeah, we had it first.
I'm kind of not surprised. I feel like Croatia is overall a bit more advanced,
I mean, that's why we are in European Union, because we did prove to the international community that we do have laws and some movements that are maybe a little bit more of in line with respecting of human rights as European Union. So yeah.
In Georgia, we have this anti-discrimination law. So I wanted to know if you also have this kind of law?
Yes, we do. We do have the anti-discrimination law. Like, I think we had it since 2008. 2000s were the years where we really tried to make our legal system better because we were preparing for entering European Union. And, after independence, we did had to do some good things on the legal level. So we do have anti-discrimination law. It's not only anti-discrimination law that talks about discrimination based on sex orientation, gender identity, or gender expression, but also, against women, against any kind of discrimination. We don't have, one that is specifically against discrimination based on sex orientation. And we do have ombudsman, the person who is in care of respecting human rights. So, yeah, we had that.
And were people protesting about that law, or was there some backlash?
Okay, I don't really remember that there were any kind of protests in anti-discrimination law, but maybe I'm wrong. I know that we had a little bit more protest on one interesting thing that happened in Croatia. When we entered the European Union, right after we had a big referendum on definition of marriage. So now we have in our constitution that marriage, not in 2013, in 2012. Now we have in constitution that marriage is community between man and female. So like marriage is not anything else. And that moment, actually, what was good and bad, LGBTIQ movement was finally start to find a little bit more about it. So we have this, I don't know how to say it, but a little bit evil saying that actually the movement that was so against LGBTI community actually helped LGBTI community to express themselves and to fight for their rights a little bit more, because it was really discriminatory. Now we have discriminatory part in our constitution, which is really contradictory, because in your constitution says there is no discrimination based on anything, and now we have, but no, marriage is like community between husband and wife. So that was the moment that I remember we had a little bit of protesting. It was really interesting because, even though we did protest, it didn't change anything. Most people were for this sentence to be put in our constitution. But what good happens right after it, I think 1 year after, we had our law on civic partnership, on life partnership. So it's basically the same rights as heterosexual relationships, but only difference was there was no adoption for same-sex partners. But now, 2021, like in May, like last month, our court decided that same-sex partners can, and communities like partnership, they can adopt children. I mean, they said that they can apply for adoption. It doesn't mean necessarily that they will succeed it, because adoption process in Croatia is so long and complicated even for hetero partners, but it is possible for same-sex partners to adopt a child.
And there was one couple who really fought for it.
Yes, because when they applied for adoption, they said it was not possible to do it. I think they were turned out for 2 or 3 times. And they really pushed it so hard on every single court we had in Croatia. I think that was the last one, like the highest court. And also, if this court would not decide this way, they were ready to go to European Human Rights Court. So we were like a little bit surprised that it went the way it went. Mm-hmm. But, it's good that it went that way.
Yeah. Do you think that marriage equality is really far in the future for Croatia?
Yeah, because we have it in constitution. There are procedures to change that constitution again. This referendum was, I think, 50 million kunas, like in expense. I don't believe that now we will have something like that. I think that, but that's my personal opinion, that they think this like partnership law is like, okay, it's the best you get, it's the best compromise. But I don't think it's the same thing, and I think that we should fight for the marriage equality. I read really, I think yesterday or day before, that if same-sex partners got married outside of Croatia, it is recognized inside of Croatia, So this is not something that I know if it's for true, like fact for true, but I read somewhere in papers. Yeah, maybe I'm saying wrong. I know that I read it like I think yesterday in some article. They recognize it as a marriage, but not when it comes to children. Still, it's not recognized. Like
you can't adopt in another country and come back.
I think that is the problem. You can as a single person. If I had my partner and I wanted to adopt, but I would be the only parent, and that's not the point and idea of family.
I had this question. You have resistance or protests throughout the history, even before 2000s.
For me, it's really hard to talk before 2000s, and I think it's connected also to the what happened after independence. When we gained our independence, we were more focused, especially civic sector, NGOs. We were more focused on reconciliation and peace movement and anti-war campaigns. So I think that until 2000s, we didn't really had some movement that was including LGBTIQ community. I think that the whole, everything was connected to the anti-war campaigns and peaceful reconciliation after it. Also, I think that our biggest NGOs that are part of LGBTIQ movement, they was established in the early 2000s. Like I said, I don't remember the huge protests. The biggest one, I cannot call it a protest because it's a pride. And it is a protest, but it is a pride. So I think it was that, and this support walks when every single of this law was pushed through the government. So we had, when we had this life partnership law, people were walking in support of it. When we had, I think, also the same-sex relationship legalized, we were also had this walk. So yeah, but I don't remember a huge, protest in Croatia connected to the human rights of LGBTIQ people. I think in Croatia, biggest focus was on education if we talk about protests.
And did the end of the war and the independence of Croatia change something for LGBTQ people?
Like I said, we had a different focus on different kinds of human rights, I think. We didn't have so much focus on minorities, I would say, but, to have a country. But this is something that I really struggled to think of an answer on, because I really don't know. I mean, I am the child of the former country, but I wasn't awarely, or I didn't have my adult life since this period, so I cannot answer to it. But, in some general point, I can answer like a former question, that we are more focused on anti-war campaigns and peaceful reconciliation and, European integrations, something more like that. I think 2 weeks ago, I was on one training course that was held by Lori. Lori, they are a lesbian group in Rijeka. They were one of the first NGO that were dealing with the LGBTIQ area. So I think they are now 20 years old. There were some former organizations, but they are not existing anymore. There was a lady that she said, okay, I remember it, how it started and how some things in 2002 seemed like impossible. But in 2021, now we have right to adopt a child. So things did change after the independence, but I don't think it's just because of it. It's, the general movement of development of human rights in Europe in total. But also, I think it's important to mention that even in previous thing, I think that rights of LGBTIQ community was okay. They were not the same as everybody else, but they are still not today. But I think in comparison to the rest of the world, it was really a little bit more advanced. I think I read somewhere that 1977 we had legalized same-sex relationships. And in 1973 we had... it was not, in a medical sense, homosexuality was not recognized as disease, which was established...
Was it before?
Yeah, before... Yeah, I think 17 years before it.
So communism kind of played a...
it's really hard for me, it's really interesting to talk about communism and human rights because But yeah, I think that our former states, especially when the centralized part of Yugoslavia, like the federative states, tried to fight a little bit more for the, not independence, but to have a little bit more of decision rights within the federation. They started to do this little bit more advanced laws, more respecting of human rights than maybe the rest of the world. So that is my 2 cents on this story. I don't know if it's true. This is really my personal opinion on that. We also had really okay-ish laws for abortion in former states. So it was not, like, from my perspective now, it was not that bad in this part.
Yeah, well, when I compare from my country's background, which was obviously never communist or never in the dictatorship, in some aspects, women's rights and minorities' rights, like the whole communist ideology that everyone should be equal, it did play, like it did have some positive effects. Like obviously there was some bad sides. I will never refute that. But I've always heard that people who lived there also, I don't know, capitalism was not best on every aspect of life, like by very far. This is not true.
Like as any system, it's like a good and bad. Every single moment you have good and bad. So, but I just wanted to say that maybe, from my perspective, this independence of Croatia didn't, change a lot of things, but it was more on a general level, like because of the whole European Union were advocating a little bit more and more and more for human rights in general. And the all states that went from transformation from communism to democracies, they had to step up and, follow these rules if they not even rules, but these values if they want to be the part of European Union. So I think that maybe that was the biggest push towards more respectful society when we talk about human rights and also human rights of LGBTIQ people.
You mentioned an NGO, and we wanted to know how non-governmental organizations are trying to raise awareness about the subject in total and also about safe sex.
Like I said, we have some couple of really strong organizations that are working in this field. We have Zagreb Pride, we have Rainbow Families, Dugen Obitelji, we have Lorice from Rijeka, the lesbian group. And this is just the ones that are on top of my head. Also, we have organizations that are fighting mostly female rights, that are also dealing with the topic of LGBTIQ and safe sex and gender equality. We cannot talk about LGBTIQ if we don't talk about gender and gender equality and equality in total. What they're doing, obviously organizing prides and supporting LGBT community to become a little bit more visible. They're also offering legal advice. They want to adopt, they want to check on how to register as a life partnership for the people they feel that they were discriminated, so how to put it in the court. Also, we have an organization that is called Transaid that is mostly focused on rights of trans people. But what is really important, NGOs are not working only with or for LGBTIQ community. They are also working with general population, in raising awareness and maybe to remove this unknownness, to create safe spaces where people that are outside of LGBT community can also meet people from the community. They are working a lot with schools because, in schools now there is, you for sure had LGBTIQ student, for sure. Like every single teacher in a country, at one point they had student from the community, but they didn't know. So lately we do have a lot of interest from teachers in LGBTIQ topics. For example, how to react when you have a student that comes out, how to talk about the topics when you have a student like that in a classroom. We also talk a little bit more about gender sensitive language that we use, because in Croatia we have really, gender not sensible language. In English you have students, it's same for female and male. In Croatian we don't have it. We have it student as učenik for male and učenica for female. But somehow we always spoke about male layer.
Well, if there is a group with both, you pronounce male.
Male, yeah. And somehow, we also, and it's grammatically correct, but, for example, we also want to, maybe when you have a group of more females than males, maybe we can talk, in female perspective. So this kind of stuff that sometimes it seems that it's not a lot, it's not much, but it's really small steps towards.
Teachers are reaching out themselves.
Yes, I can talk about one initiative that we have here. It's good initiative. It's a group of 50 NGOs in Croatia that are dealing and advocating for systemic implementation of citizen education. And of course, human rights are the big part of citizenship or civic education. And at one point, we started to make some online workshops for teachers. The first one was how to talk about prejudice and stereotypes in classroom. And we asked teachers, what would you like to learn, in the domain of human rights or on political literacy, media literacy? What would you like to learn? And the top one topic was LGBTIQ. Yeah, that was the first topic. The second one was on violence, like how to talk about violence, how to talk about sexual violence or violence between peers, peer violence also. And they like to talk a little bit more about human rights in general. But the LGBTIQ topic was the first one, terminology. What is okay to say and what is not okay to say. How to deal with coming out in a classroom, because it happens more and more, especially in high school. And also what we also discussed with the teachers, it's not only that you're working with students that are from LGBTIQ community, you also have your colleagues in your restrooms, in your teacher's room. You have colleagues that are from LGBTIQ community, so please be aware of that. So we're trying to work a little bit more with teachers, but also parents. I think the Zagreb Pride, they're working a lot with parents, what to do when your child comes out, like what would you do? And like I said, we have this trans aid that are really taking care of transgender people, supporting them, giving them the right information and connecting them in a regional level.
And what are the rights for trans people right now?
It's one very blurry area in Croatia. There is possibility that I'm wrong. We don't have any laws on it. It's a small community. Me personally, I think that I know only 3 people that are from a trans community, but I don't know how to state what are their rights when they're so unpresented. They're not visible, they're not presented so much. Trans community have a struggle that maybe the rest of the community they don't have. I know that a lot of issues are connected to the healthcare and to the health insurance in Croatia. For example, you can get your hormonal exams for hormonal therapy when you go to your transition. You can get for free. It is in your basic health insurance in Croatia, but hormones, they're not for free. So, when you start your transition, you can do all exams, all medical check. I also know that at this moment in Croatia, you can do upper operation, for the breasts, but you don't have place that you can do down operation. Yeah, that usually I think that transgender people go to Serbia to do the down operation. Yeah.
To Serbia.
They have it in Serbia.
Yeah. Serbia is a little bit more advanced when we talk about trans community. I really don't know about rights of trans people, so I really don't want to go there. But I think that their community is a little bit bigger and more visible and stronger than in Croatia. Like when we talk about trans people rights, or, you have a panel on it, usually there are people from Serbia, like guests talking about this issue.
That's interesting. And what about the actual process of changing gender legally? What do you have to...
It's a long battle that you have to endure. Because it's not only a health, physical transformation, is also of your, legal persona transformation, because you have to change your name, you have to change your documents. In every single paper that you get, there is always male and female sex that you have to cross it. It's really rarely we can find, I don't want to say or other. I think you also have some legal procedure you have to do if you want to change your name, and the organization is Translate. They're helping people to to get the information in one spot. Okay, you have to do this and this. You have to be full of age, like you have to be 18 to do it by yourself. Also, you before the transition, you have to go through really thorough psychological check and support, and to different kinds of testing, not only connected to your psychic, but also to your mental state, but also with your physical state, to see what are the levels of your hormones. So it's one really long and exhausting process. In Croatia, people do not know how to behave around it or of it. Even people that are employed in medical institutions, they don't know how to treat people that are transgender, or how to act around it, or how to find or give them information. Yeah. So it's not easy to do it.
Do you have to have all the surgeries to change the gender?
No, because we had one really interesting discussion, like in this training in Rijeka that I was. Some people decide that they don't need the full transformation. Yeah. It's not necessarily, for somebody to have gender expression. They want to have the full transition. So from the legal state, I don't know how to answer, but from the sane mind state, if now I do my gender expression now is female, but I might feel that my gender identity is male, and I want to put it down in my ID. So if you want to change your name or your gender in your ID, I think that you can, without being of the right gender expression. But also it's my personal opinion, and in the form that I know, I don't really know these legal things. I don't believe that if there is no procedures that are strictly directing every single step of this process, because even in Croatia we still don't know how to deal with it completely.
Is it a big topic of discussion in the public sphere, the whole LGBTQ and trans?
It's interesting because it's a highly political question, whenever we talk about LGBTIQ, there is a really strong polarization. And, because it's a question of values, at least some parties, we have two really strong political currents. It is about the values, but about human rights values. And it is about the values, but family values, And it's every single time when we talk about LGBTIQ topics, there are discussion in public sphere. We have in Croatia 2 or 3 or 4, for example, really strong right-oriented NGOs that are really fighting against the rights of LGBTIQ people, and we have NGOs that are fighting for. So whenever there's some news in this sphere, we do have a public discussion. For example, when we had this law on adoption, not law, sorry, when court said yes, it's possible, we had a public discussion on it. People that were supporting it and fight for it, and got that now finally they will have more opportunities for adoption, because now also same-sex couples can do it. And you had the big part of community that also said, no, this is not good, it destroys family values, we had to fight against it. Catholic Church is a big part of it in Croatia. There is always really strong opinion from Catholic Church on LGBTIQ rights. Opinion is that they have too much rights, which is not possible to have too much rights if you had the right or you don't have it. But also now I read an article, I think 2 weeks ago, one priest from, I think, Rijeka, they also said it's okay for this adoption. It's okay, God wants these children to have parents. So it was okay, slowly going better. And there is also one thing that I want to stress out. We had a big research on political literacy of our graduates. So students from 17, 18 years old. Overall, results are negative, and it's quite disappointing that our students are not politically literate when they finish their high school education. But one thing that was standing a little bit out, because this is the research that it's done every single 5 years. So we had it from 2010, 2015, and now in 2020. The one area that we put a focus on was LGBTIQ area. Our students have more positive attitudes toward LGBTIQ community. 10 years ago, there were a huge number of people, students saying that they don't want them as a friends. They don't want them in their house. They can do it, but in their own four walls. But now there is a slowly shifting this kind of attitudes. They are more friendly towards, more friendly understanding towards LGBTI community. We discussed a lot. Why is it happening? Because our teachers are not experts in talking about these topics, and it's not their fault. It's just our fault of our higher education system, because they do not prepare teachers to talk about topics like that. So it's not our schools, so it's not our education. Our whole society is still quite against it and discriminatory, so it's not a society. So what is it? What's happening that young people are becoming more open? Like I said, we are going a little bit in the line with the European Union. And there is one thing that is called pop culture, that it's really affecting, this Gen Z generation in creating their opinion, and social networks and Netflix and the series that are talking about LGBTIQ topics. For example, sex education. Also, there was atypical. I think this minority representation that we had in TV series in Netflix, not only minority in form of LGBTQ, but also racial minorities or people with disabilities. It's getting a little bit more of, it's not unknown that much anymore. So yeah, it's a cool person. Yeah, I can connect to that person. So I think media is doing one part of our job. I was talking with one of my friends, like everybody's coming out now. Yeah, because now we have basic safety for people to come out. 20 years ago, you didn't have it. And especially because it's getting a little bit normalized. We have a long way to go. It's not the time, everything is great and we don't have to change anything. We have to change a lot of things. We have to change a lot of things in form of female rights, of women's rights. Because still, for me, very interesting discussion is on Istanbul Declaration, that in Croatia is still not ratified, or it is, and we have a really strong current against it. So we have, I really like that somehow society or people that are dealing with it, they push the topic of gender-based violence in Croatia now on the high level, or family violence. And gender-based violence, it's not only against females, it's also against the LGBTIQ community. It's patriarchy against everybody else. So I really like that the people are pushing this kind of topics, and also women movement and LGBTIQ movement are gathering together to fight against this kind of discrimination. I would just like to put this topic a little bit more on public discussion in Karlovac, because I think I'm 5 years in Karlovac, and I think this is the first time I spoke about LGBTIQ topic, when we connected to NGO world. But also maybe I'm not aware of it, which is completely possible. This is the first activity that I'm part of it, that I could actually talk about it. So I really do hope that this first step that you did will continue it with second step of some other interesting initiatives. I know that this year, Youth Council or Advisory Board on Youth Karlovac, it was amazing. I mean, they put a post. There was a day against discrimination of LGBTIQ, Idaho. Yeah, they put a post that are supporting Idaho, and it was nice, and it's really good because it's coming from young people to young people. It's not a topic that I want to pose in our community, but obviously young people want to talk about it. And, for me, if young person that's listening this need to talk about it, just come to me and we will talk. Also, I do believe that we will, within different NGOs in Karlovac, we will try to introduce some activities based on LGBTIQ topics. We have good cooperation with Youth Center in Varaždin. They have the whole queer program. So they have a program that is designed LGBTIQ topics. I think they are running it for 6 months now. And it's really interesting to see, it's a safe space for LGBTIQ people to talk about it, but also for the general population to explore different topics within it. So let's hope that something like this can happen in Karlovac, of course, if it's needed. I mean, this is the big step for a starter.
Thank you so much for answering all our questions and giving us the Croatian and Karlovacian point of view. Like it's really good that we are hosting more local people because we are working for the local community. It's all part of being a ESC volunteer. So thank you again. It was very interesting.
Yeah, and very educational.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was preparing for that, and like I said, I'm sorry if I said something wrong. It's not my general topic, but I really tried to put it in the most realistic frame that I could.
Yeah, we always advertise Kikiriki Talks as just a conversation between friends.
That's okay. So I can say something completely stupid and people can no, it's not like that.
Yeah. So thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you for inviting me again, and good luck with your future podcasts.
Yeah. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode. We will see you in 2 weeks for another topic. As usual, you can follow us on social media. All the links are in the description. And
and if you have any questions, you can always comment.
And slide into the DMs.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Fala.
Bye.
Bye.